Yeary Boardroom, 2400 San Bernardo Avenue, Laredo, Texas, February 9th, 2023. It is 5:30 p.m. here at the Yeary Boardroom. I will preside over the meeting for today. I'll call roll call. Mr. Juan Ramirez.
Here.
Mr. Guadalupe Gomez. Ms. Veronica B. Orduño.
Present.
Mr. Ricardo Garza is here. Mr. Goyo Lopez.
Walking in.
Walking in. Mr. Gilberto Martinez. Strolling in. No. Mrs. Monica Garcia. Absent. Okay. Yeah. We all please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 1.
Good afternoon, everyone. Item number 1, discussion and presentation to ratify the monthly disbursements for December 2022 at the regular, this is the, yes, right, for December 2022 at the regular meeting of the Board of Trustees. Ms. Ayala?
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. Good evening, Honorable Board. I'll begin with covering the disbursements. Okay, I was practicing, so I need, oops, here we go. I can't erase it. So I was practicing trying to be all that, right? There we go. All right, here we go. So total cash disbursements were recorded in the amount of $27.4 million. Of that amount, we covered $16.5 million for payroll costs. And for accounts payable, that means those payments for the cost of goods and services, we paid $10.8 million. If you want to see the payments for all vendors, they're included under this screen, and you also have a copy under tab 1. All these payments, in the spirit of transparency, are published, but these only include vendor payments. We are not including payments to employees for privacy reasons. Yes, if they travel, obviously they'll be here, but not the regular payroll, right? So I am providing the amount we spent as a whole for all employees on page 1. Any questions?
No, go proceed.
Thank you. May I read the item?
Please.
Discussion and presentation to approve monthly reports and/or other updates reports. The unaudited financial statements, donations report, tax collection report. I will now open the unaudited financial statements. You do have a copy of the presentation under tab 2.
Yes, it is.
Right? Yes. So I will go slow from the request from one of the trustees. Okay. So in this slide, we are presenting the revenues, and these are the year-to-date collections. So right now, we have recorded, hold on, let me get the highlighter. $102.6 million, which represents $4.5 million more when compared to last year. And if you note, the difference is mainly here in this amount in state aid. And that has to do with an estimate that we record on behalf payments, and those are the TRS payments that the state pays on behalf of teachers, if you will. And because last year we were implementing Frontline and the system was not estimated correctly, we're going to be off this year. But once, at the end of the year, in June and July, we will be able to reconcile and you'll see the true number.
So I do want to interject, Frontline is a new system that speaks to finance, HR, and other functions.
Okay, Ms. Rodriguez?
Ms. Ayala, this 102 million, where does it come from? Do you have a breakdown of where that money is coming from?
Right, it's coming from 14.2 from local revenues.
Yeah, but, like, do you have, like, okay.
A
these are the
further
local-
detail?
Yes. Yeah, an itemized
Right,
list of.
we do give you a financial statement,
Uh-huh.
but it's also summarized. As far as the detail of what's the composition of all those $14.2 million dollars consist of, we would have to give you a report and write it from the system, which I don't have with me today.
Okay.
Well,
Yes.
I guess to
But
make it
you would see
easier-
the tax collections will be there.
Yeah,
are
so-
deposited there.
So when it says local, we're talking about tax collection more than
Yes,
anything
sir.
else. And then state is the
The state
five or
aid.
six revenue streams that come maybe from the state, or one revenue stream that comes from the state. And then the federal, all the federal monies, but all the revenue streams that come from the federal
Right.
government.
The grants.
Mostly the indirect cost rate that we're able to charge federal programs
Right.
for the administration of the grants, and also the SHARS reimbursements as well. We deposit them under federal. Those are the bills that we submit to Medicaid for reimbursement.
Ms. Ayala, and what exactly is charged reimbursements?
Thank you. I can never memorize that, but I did anticipate you asking me. It stands for, it's an acronym for School Health and Related Services.
So, if I may, if you provide a service to a special needs student, and not just special needs, but particular services, and I don't have a list of those, and I'm pretty sure that, that special ed knows about that. So if we provide a service, let's talk having to do with physical therapy and so on. And maybe not just that one, because I don't want to tell you the wrong thing. But if there's a service that we contract, so then we pay for it, correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Ayala, and then we can get that reimbursement back. But there has to be an accounting of the money that is being spent for those special services, and then how to reconcile that.
And does this money go back to special ed children
No.
or the special ed department?
No, ma'am.
It just goes
Into
into the
the
regular
general
fund?
fund, right.
Okay, so
We
then-
fully fund all special ed needs, if you will.
Uh-huh.
As a matter of fact, there is a test that we need to meet. We can never spend less than what we spent the prior year for special ed program. So there is a barrier there, not a barrier, a safeguard, so that we don't spend less on those services.
Okay,
But
so if the special ed people, you know how we had this gentleman who said they didn't have any money to go practice? Okay, the Special Olympics, so they would go through you to get that money?
not in this, not the way we budget the whole budget process. So what we do is, we estimate all the revenues from local, what we think we're gonna collect from taxes, what we think we're gonna collect from the state, and what we think we're gonna collect from the federal programs, and this includes Medicaid
Right.
services, right?
Uh-huh.
And then from that pot, that would give us how much the limit to spend for the full year. From that pot, then we start funding the programs, abiding by all limitations imposed by law, to all the programs, and that's basically how we balance the budget. So just because we bill for Medicaid for special ed services in our current system, we don't give it back as a credit to the program. It's part of this budget.
And it cannot be amended, undone, so that that money goes back to special ed only?
So there's a reporting requirement that we have to submit to the state, and in that reporting, they ask us if we put it back into the program. I believe if we put it back into the program, it does impact a certain report. That is why we do it this way. I would need to look more into that.
Can you do that? Do we need approval for that? Because
To
I
look-
I
I
don't want to
would-
be like, you didn't approve it, Mrs. Orduño, or the board president didn't.
So I would
didn't
give
ask
the
for that.
information to the superintendent.
And trickle down.
And,
And
okay.
We go through the process of
Yes,
asking, and then it comes back to us.
Yeah, but last time I asked, and then
Yes, it was
Ms. Ayala
different
came
last
back
time.
and said, no, because the board didn't
Oh,
give me the directive.
there's some information that we gather that, yeah, and those are the protocols. So there's some that they can readily give you. There's some of them that has to go through, board action.
Okay,
so
so
those-
does
and we'll-
this
and
one
we'll-
have to go through board
Well,
action?
that's what we'll find out. We'll find
Well,
out.
I do want to also say that there is a limitation on the number of reports. We do have to report them to the PEMS system for not only the number, but the time and the effort and the cost that it takes. If it's not an easily generated report, we are mandated to put all of those reports together and to send them, because the state is telling us if it's taking someone away or a group of people away from doing their responsibilities, it's not something that you just say, go.
Right.
And you can get it, then that has to be reported to the state, and how it's being reported and who is asking for it and so on. That's something that we have to abide by. But getting back to your question, if it's something that can be shared with you, I will, and go back to your Special Olympics, go back to, because that's really your first question.
Right.
So can some of those monies go back to Special Olympics? I will also tell you at this point, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Ayala, Laredo ISD funds more than the 100% that is, or the limitations that are provided for special education, because the services that we provide cost more than what is being
Right.
allocated. So we actually put more money in there. That is why each of the schools has a pot that they're given by the number of students that they have.
Right.
And the school then decides, based on their SBDM or their site-based decision-making committee, on how to allocate that. I just finished having a meeting with principals, and we went over that. And that meeting was on Thursday, if I'm correct. On Thursday, I had a meeting with just secondary principals, and I had one with elementary. And it was pretty much, okay, we know that you have that pot of money by law. Your site-based decision-making committee has to make decisions on how to allocate that. But if you're leaving out Special Olympics, then what is it that you need to do? Because that allocation needs to be from the very beginning. And their response, in all transparency and honesty, was the year prior, we did not have to worry about transportation to these things. But I did find out from our principals, and Dr. Cruz is here, that they do fundamentally prepare for 4 competitions during the school year. The problem that has occurred this year is the transportation piece of those children or those programs going someplace. So I asked, okay, to what extent do you practice and how do you practice? Because the question of that gentleman that came here was, well, we don't get to practice in a bowling alley. And the bowling ball is this heavy and so on. So we looked into it, and so I know that Dr. Cruz is looking further into that. But the opportunities to practice for those individual events, those happen at the school. If we need to refine some of that, we are looking into that, Ms. Orduño, because I'm telling you, you brought up that comment, and we did have that meeting on Thursday, so the principals are aware that they need to ensure that there is equity among programs. And I'm not just talking about equity in athletics or equity and also meaning gender. Males and females, we've got those safeguards, and we want to make sure that that happens. So we do have we have an equity report that Ms. Ayala also works with, and I may be using the wrong term, but you know what I'm talking about. So all of those reports are mandated, and we have to be able to provide that opportunity for the state to see how we're spending it, what we're spending it on, and how it was allocated.
It's a maintenance of effort.
Maintenance of effort.
Yes.
At our level, we don't tell a campus, go and spend this much. I think that the only program that gets money that is singularly funded for that one program, and I believe, Ms. Ayala, you can say that it's ROTC, ROTC was given $15,000 through several boards back.
Outside formula,
Mande?
outside formula.
Outside formula, because every allocation that we do is by formula. It's either by formula from program or formula by the number of
My per-
students. or-
Students in the area, as an example for special ed, we get the special ed counts, and so we distribute based on the number of kids in special ed program, right? And for bilingual, the same thing, we grab the bilingual allotment, we divide it by per student, and that's the allocation that we give to the schools.
Keeping in mind that some of them are dual coded or coded 3 ways, like I can have a special ed kid
Yes.
who's bilingual. My concern, and the reason I'm asking this is because, say, the school already allotted the money, and we talked about the sleeves
Yes.
that our teachers have
And
never
in fact, we
had.
just talked about that again.
Okay.
Yesterday.
Mhm.
And so, in cabinet, and one of the comments that we made, or that I made, was, okay, they already have gloves, but we want sleeves because of the
Right,
concerns that you
right.
have. And so, where's Mr. Velasquez is here, and we talked about how can we afford that, and Ms. Ayala was part of that cabinet meeting, that was yesterday, so we are making plans for that.
Okay, and then say something happens to the changing table, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't go, it's February, fine, but we can't have a classroom without a changing table. That's why I'm saying, okay, so where is this fund gonna come through or from? If the budget freezes, or if there's no more money, where is this money gonna come from for this changing table they need it?
So,
Right.
so if there is a need and something breaks down, example, HVAC, I mean, we're not gonna say, well, you know what, there's no money, so therefore we have to wait till next year. So we do have, other ways of diverting money. So for example, last year when we had a couple of years ago, when we had the leaks at Cigarroa High School, or when all of the HVAC, not all, I'm generalizing, a lot of the HVAC units in different places, including cafeterias, were going down. So what we had to do was, okay, we've got this much money here, this is not well, it is a priority item, it was on our capital improvement plan, let's take it away because this is more important. If a changing table is not there, then we just need to know from the teachers, from the staff, this equipment is
Yes.
not there, and we will provide it, because we are charged with the responsibility of providing the necessary resources for particularly special needs students.
Right.
So
In
it's just like
addition-
if something breaks down, we're gonna fix it.
And in addition to, this is only general fund. The program also gets IDEA federal funds, and we use that also to provide furniture and equipment that the students may need as well.
Money in here?
No, ma'am.
This is another item?
I can, as we go along under special revenues, I can show you where.
Okay, please do.
Very
Thank
quick,
you.
Ms. Ayala, to the question Mr. Orduño had about the money that is received from SHAR's funding. And the question, I believe, was, can it be used for something else or modified later on? So the question is, it can happen.
I would
If-
not recommend it.
approved by
Right,
the-
I would not recommend it only because it may impact the maintenance of effort, other calculations.
But it can
But-
happen
But
if
that is
approved.
the reason why also we fund that program over 120%. We're required to spend 55% of the allotment, but we're spending a whole lot, millions more. So you can almost say it's going in circles, right? But you're just not seeing it there outright.
Want any angry parents. I don't want our kids to go
Absolutely.
without, I was an angry parent 25 years ago, let me tell you, okay? Because there was nothing there for my son. And my son had to be the catalyst. My son had to be, okay, well, open up a unit, now pat the unit, now get a teacher, now he goes to middle school, open up a unit. I don't want that anymore. I want the units, I want special ed kids to already have everything in place that they need to make productive members of society. And
Of
I don't
course.
want parents upset, the way I was upset at the district, and I sued the district, okay? I was like, no, no me lo están dando. So we don't want, I want proactive. That's what I want. I'm all into be very transparent, let's tell the truth, and be proactive. I don't want to be reactive. I don't want, if the table breaks tomorrow, I want for fixed asset to already have a table. Not, I'm gonna go make a work order, take it to the board, let me approve it. No, 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 no. We need proactive. If they need more gloves, for them to get more gloves. Not, I'm gonna
Absolutely.
go
And you
get
know,
something.
every kid deserves the best in LISD, and we're for it. There are limitations that we also need to, that they're there, but that's not to say that we cannot address it in some other time, right? If you want it right now, well, we have this huge operations going on in the district, and sometimes it's best to talk to the program manager because they're responsible for the funding, right? And so we look into ways how we can take care of those items that are urgent as well. But we also need to be compliant with the rules. So I wish I can tell you, yes, let me write a check, here it is, go get it. That's not the way it kind of works.
So how uncompliant are we if we
We're
have an
not.
extra, if I'm telling you, have an extra changing table there? How would that be non-compliant?
We can talk about it during the budget process, absolutely. And again, sometimes at the end of the year, when I close the year, if we have excess revenues, we start funding those projects that are underfunded. Now, if that item or that need has not been provided for us for consideration during the process of funding the projects,
just
we
an
don't
example I
get.
have for you,
Right.
not
We
that
don't
anybody
fund it
needs one.
because we were not aware of it.
Okay.
Well,
So-
let me just, so we can move forward, and excellent, and that's really what the expertise that you bring to the table, and that's what I wanted to hear. But because once we get to the budget process, this is why I'm happy that you guys are gonna go through this, because everybody in here is gonna ask for something, right? And the greatest thing that we've been doing over at least the time that we've been here, not that they didn't do it before, but we take a smart and responsible approach to everything. And by smart, it's that proactivity that you're talking about. By smart is where we tell everybody in here, I need you guys to come in with your worst-case scenario, not under budget, because if not, you don't underfund yourself and you're in trouble already. Give us a true picture of what you're looking at, and especially the managers, that they're going to be saying, look, I think over the next 3 years, yeah, these things are getting worn out. We better start planning ahead, like we're doing with the buses, right? And that's really what we've been trying to do over the past. There are some gaps in the system that I've noticed. One of them might be that one, but it might not be. A lot of the times is we're expecting the reality of getting everybody in here to come up with everything to us without having any reservation. And just the plain, transparent truth about what they're gonna need. I thank a lot of the parents that you're talking about, because they do come to us in every field, that they come over and they say, well, I'll give you, for instance, with the ROTC, that would come and tell us something like that. And we say, Florida, look into it. Well, they have their budget here, they've only spent X amount of dollars, but they have all this money in their budget already that they haven't allocated. Why is it? Well, then it falls on them rather than us. Why didn't they allocate it, right? And use it accordingly. And then the other deal was that we were very good at it, and I hope we start again. There was some monies that continued to revolve with the federal funds on that. I personally got really involved with having a special needs play area for the kids at Alma Pierce. And sure enough, we had to go through Ms. Allen and says, hey, you know what, it does qualify. You know, and then, because obviously your arms go up and say, why didn't it qualify before? Well, they have a set of rules that they have to follow, but the monies were there and we used them. But unless we continue to ask the question like you're asking it right now, this is the way the process works, and this is where we get the answers. And maybe sometime down the line, we can add that, just on that Special Olympics, to the committee agenda, so that we can tackle it right there and then and say, hey, for Special Olympics, what do you guys use it for? How is it allocated? Where do you put it? And then the ideas start flowing about how can we do it differently? Where can we tap into to get any more? But that's the free flow information back and forth is the greatest thing that you're going to find out, that of the way that things work.
I do want to add something before we leave this item. We are required to conduct a comprehensive needs assessment. And you're going to hear the word, the acronym CNA, CNA, CNA. A comprehensive needs assessment takes place at every campus and every department. And it is a forecast, a projection of what that program manager believes is going to be needed. Because as Ms. Ayala is saying, there are boundaries. I mean, some boundaries, but at the same time, formulas, and at the same time, the limitations of funding. So if we were to ask math department at a particular school, what do you need? So they have their own comprehensive needs assessment. Maybe at this school you need this, but I don't need it for math. In this other school, I need science. If you're talking about departments, I know that in their comprehensive needs assessment, that's why we have a capital improvement plan. We already figured out, you know what? The air conditioners always break down May, June, and July because of the heat, number one. So what are the projections, Mr. Velasquez, also Mr. Nada? How do we make those projections? And then we say, can we afford this? So if we cannot afford this much, because the pot is going to stay the same, the way you slice the pie, that's what's different. The amount of revenues that you're getting, we can say these are the revenues that we're projecting we're going to get, either from federal, state, or our own local funds. But the way you slice it, that's going to be determined by what is the decision based on the comprehensive needs assessments of the entire district. And that's how we work it. Now, if there is a particular need, we might say, it's just like in your own home. If you say, well, you know what, se quebró the washing machine, and I didn't put that into my budget, but it really broke this time, and I can't go and do it someplace else. Well, now, instead of maybe allocating this other that I had planned, now I'm going to use this other money instead for the washing machine that I need, or the new refrigerator, or whatever it happens to be. So it's a balancing act. There are laws and compliance requirements, and those compliance requirements are pretty much stated out loud and in written form to federal programs, to state programs, and to us as a school district.
So when we're talking right now about the sleeves, and you said you met with your cabinet.
Yes.
What is the outcome of that, ma'am?
So the outcome of that was that I directed them to find funding, whether it's from safety, because, and I'm not talking about Mr. Perez, I'm talking about from our safety grants or from our funding to see if we can find.
I'll take care of it. I'll look
Yes.
into it.
So, Ms. Ayala, at this particular meeting, that's the purpose of having a cabinet meeting. What are some of the things that we can do? Now, I want to go back to her statement. If something is not brought up to us from the department or from the campus specifically, we're running the district from this view. You know, there are 32 campuses, and there are X amount of programs, and each one of them have rules. If someone doesn't bring something to us, and we're not made known of it, then we don't automatically,
We don't
if we
know.
could forecast every single thing, it would be
Right.
great. But we forecast the things that we know, or we project the things that we know, and we put it into the budget right now. So do we have let's say a kitty, where we can say, oh, I've got discretionary funds to be able to deal with that? Well, we don't necessarily, we have to provide a balanced budget. It has to be published 10 days before the budget is approved, and it has to meet all the tests, and she's using the word tests. Those tests are like, it is a test. Does it meet this requirement? Does it meet this requirement? Does it meet this requirement? That's how that budget is going to be presented to you. If you decide to change something, it still has to meet the tests, and if we're taking this away from this, we still have to find ways to meet those tests before it's submitted for approval from you.
Funding
Well-
is quite complex.
Yeah, so what we can, like I said, we can take up those, and we'll go on. There's a wide array of more information that we're gonna have to go through for everybody.
Right.
Sorry, go ahead, what you can say, you needed to say
Just
something?
a final question. So for Special Olympics, it's the end of this month. Do we have transportation and food covered for those athletes?
So Ms. Ayala was going to be looking into that, as well as the schools. What we did was we took, and I know people are smiling, what we do is when a need is coming
Is
up
that the
and someone
Pee-wee?
says.
There's a Pee-wee something coming up. Is
Yeah,
that,
well, right now we have Special Olympics already, if you notice. So if we find, if there is a need the very first thing, remember, all the monies have already been allocated to the schools. So if a school says, I don't have any money, we actually take their budget, not take it away from them. We just say, well, let us look at your budget ourselves. Let us look at your line items and see if there's funding there in your line items. Now, we still have to talk to the principals because, as a good example, someone may ask for a fan bus, okay, and that just happened. Someone may ask for a fan bus. So, Sylvia Rios, do you have money for a fan bus? Well, no, I don't have money for a fan bus. I do have money, well, I don't have monies either, but if I were to say, we want to go post-district, because now somebody's going to region or by district or whatever, and we have to pay for a fee, we do. But one of the things that we're saying is, okay, can that funding be found at the campus level or at the department level? That's the lowest level first. If there is an emergency, and we've had meetings where we've had emergencies where we need to find extra funding for something, and so there's a process to go with Ms. Ayala and say, well, where can we take it from? And I know that always we look at that fund balance and we say, let's take it from the fund balance. If you mess with the fund balance or you mess with SHARS, as an example, you're already then thinking, I'm not going to need that. Well, no, we need to have that cushion, not because we want to save it, but because as a district, we want to be able to meet our debts. We want to be able to project what's going to happen in the future, and we need to live within the means of our budget.
As a perfect example, I need to have the cash flow so I can make all those disbursements. So I have to be highly liquid.
We have an invitation here from the Department of Special Education. Opening ceremony is the last day of February. Secondary schools is March the 1st. Elementary schools is March the 2nd. There's a victory dance here at the Dr. A. Marcus Nelson room on March the 1st. That's for elementary, and then secondary's victory dance is March the 2nd.
Right. And so that invitation came from our curriculum instruction and assessment division. And under that division, of course, we have our special education department. And that was sent to us, and I know that Ms. Rocha put it there for you to be able to attend if you can. It's a special day. We've had it before.
It's nice, really, really nice, really nice. So we can continue there's a million questions to be asked, but I hope it's cleared up at least a little bit about the process and everything that goes on. The only one last item in there on the what is it? The CNA?
The
CNA?
SHARS,
No, the CNA.
comprehensive needs assessment.
Usually, I think this is because it measures your ability to do your budgeting on your own, that I think the plus and minus is within 2%, maybe. I think that we've seen it in the past. And then if it changes drastically, then you're not doing your job.
So that is a planning document, right?
Yeah.
And then we provide them with the budget, right? So
Yeah.
it constrains.
Yeah.
The ability.
So it contracts and
We can't
expands.
fund everything that
No,
they
it
want,
contracts and
right? I want all
expands.
this,
They have to
but this is how
prioritize.
much I
Correct.
can afford.
Correct. All righty. We'll move on so that we can, but yeah, I'm glad for all the questions because as we go along, there's a learning curve here, so.
There's good questions.
So are you
Alrighty,
going
next
to you want to go to the next item, or you want to finish the tax collections report? You want to move on
To the next item, or you want me to finish? I don't-
with the tax collections?
I'll cover the tax
Yes.
collections. All right. So I took my glasses off, now I can see. So the July to December collections were $19 million, $1.7 million more when compared to last year. But when you compare the percentages, it's 3.15% less. Struggling a little bit there. And then when we compare the October to December collections, we collected $18.1 million, $1.5 million more when compared last year. However, we're still behind 0.49% when you look at the percentages to the levy. Here we have expenditures by object. If you notice, most of our expenditures are in payroll costs, $79.6 million. If you notice, we have $9.3 million less, and that's because we transferred payroll salaries, teacher salaries over to ESSER. So that's going to be a theme that you're going to hear from me telling you all every month, because you're going to see that deficit ongoing.
So with that being said, notice that it's 9.3 million. Remember, for us to turn in a budget, a balanced budget last year, we were allowed by the state, just like other school districts, to use ESSER funds to be able to balance the budget. But once ESSER goes, we have to be able to put some of those people back, and some of them are going to leave by attrition, or some of them are going to retire, and we're really going to have to look at the number of students that we have, the number of students per program, and then at the same time, be able to say, okay, if we're already 9 million more, that means that we have to find ways to be able to meet the academic needs, as well as being able to pay for those teachers when they come back. And that's about another year, correct, Ms. Ayala?
Yes, and all of those payroll costs represent 88% of the total cost of $90 million. So everything's mostly going to payroll. And here we have those same $90 million, and 53% of that amount is spent in instructional services,
So
function
far.
11. Yes, followed by plant maintenance and operations in the amount of $10.2 million. Under other financing sources and uses, we transferred out $1.5 million so far. Last year, we did transfer $14.6 million, a lot more. Under the administrative cost ratio, the first threshold ratio is 8.55%. Our amended budget has 11.75%. Our fiscal year-to-date ratio is 11.99%. And again,
So I really want you to explain administrative cost ratio, because everybody well, not everybody, that's a generalization.
Correct?
That what is administrative, does that mean administrative people, or does it mean administering can you give us an explanation? Because I don't want people to think it's the wrong thing.
so the definition is here. It is determined by dividing non-federal operating expenditures in general administration 41, which is us, mainly first floor, instructional leadership, which is second floor, if you want to have a visual. Instructional by expenditure, those will be your numerator. Your denominator includes instruction, function 11, instructional resources, function 12, curriculum development and staff development, 13, and guidance and counseling, 31. And from there, we exclude other object codes. So basically, this is an indicator that informs people if we're top-heavy. So right now, the amended budget will be, around here? So we already lost 4 points, more or less.
So, Ms. Ayala, again, for the ratios,
Mhm.
is there a specific ratio we need to stay below, or the higher the ratio?
So we would like to stay here at 8.55% or less.
Uh-huh.
That's the target, but right now, it's not there. And it has to do with all those reclassifications we did from teachers. We moved them to ESSER, so that plays a part in having a high rate right now.
Okay.
It'll go back.
Here we have a summary of the general operating fund. Right now, the time, as of December, the time lapsed at December 31st is at 50%. So under revenues, again, it's 102.7. It's 50.59% when compared to the time lapsed. And expenditures at 90 million, and we have obligations of $7 million. So right now, the change in fund balance, it's $11 million, which is a positive, and that is due to the collections of taxes. Eventually, you're going to see that decrease. Food service fund revenues, $9.5 million. That represents 43.71%. and expenditures of 8.5 with encumbrances of $4 million. Right now, they do have a little bit of a excess or net change of fund balance of $990,000.
So, Ms. Ayala, if they have $990,000, when we talk about
Well,
raises.
Under the actual, yes, ma'am, but if you notice, the budget is balanced.
Okay, so when we talk about races, and the races are, we're gonna raise, I don't know, we got a percentage, right? So those employees that work under
CNP, yes,
CNP,
child
right?
nutrition.
Uh-huh. They would get the raise from the money
This
that they
account,
have, right?
yes, from this account.
So we will not be including them
No.
in the other raise that we were talking about before.
Correct.
Okay, and then with this money, we could, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong. Mr. Cuellar could add more people? Because.
I truly can't speak for his program because I really don't, I'm not there on a day-to-day operations. I know that, you know,
But he's here.
personnel is always a need, but you also have a budget. And the way the program makes money is by billing meals, right? So the kids need to be there in order for him to generate and come out with what he thought he would generate.
Okay.
Good evening, board members, Dr. Rios, and our colleagues and our guests. We go by a formula called meals per labor hour.
Okay.
And basically, the number of meals that, as students are going through the line based on the participation of the breakfast and lunches and suppers, that's how we get reimbursed by the state. So based on the meals per labor hour, we also look at how many meals are being prepared with how many meals were actually taken in, through the line in the cafeteria and such. So based on that, many times, if our participation is low, then the amount of monies that we get back by the state is not going to be what we typically get. But basically, we are self-funded based on the meals that are provided. But to answer your question, can we add more personnel? As Dr. Rios mentioned, every year we do the needs assessment. And right now, this is the time of year that we're deciding for next school year for the budget process. For example, like we have the supper on site program. Something that we're considering is possibly adding 1 or 2 more staff members, but depending on participation. It's all with participation. So to answer your question, can we add more? Yeah, but we would have to work closely with human resources and also let my supervisor know the plan. Because I want to make sure we don't have a lot of staff and very little meals that are being offered or, participation.
Okay, let me tell you where I'm coming from. I visited Valdez High School, and they don't have a serving person.
Actually, it's a receiving school. They don't actually have a cafeteria full force. We go and we have individuals from our Department of Child Nutrition Center that go and distribute the meals as the students are arriving, because it's one of the non-traditional schools.
Right,
But it's something that we could revisit, because I know they have a dining area,
yes, they.
but it's a little bit different how they have their lunches. There's been times that they want lunch at 2, but we have to follow compliance with TDA. And it's one of those discussion points that we've had with the principal director, Ms. Newsom, as far as we need to make sure how many students are showing up during the breakfast time. And even if we try to leave the breakfast for after, then we not claim those meals. There's a food safety issue. So I understand your viewpoint or because I've been there, I visited with her. So it's something I need to visit because it's a unique school. But that doesn't mean they don't have a cafeteria dining place. They do, and we have staff that go.
Right.
But as far as being like Nixon or Cigarroa, such, no, because we have staff there that are constantly preparing meals. At Valdez High School, we go by what is the enrollment participation. Sometimes, we get in the morning, they say we're going to have 25 or 50, and then they end up only having 19. So we're preparing more meals, and then those other meals that we have to bring them back so we could either reheat them or donate them to either Bethany House, or we cannot leave the meals there because we're not complying with TDA. Now, there is a sharing table that we had discussed before, where the students that show up later on, they want to go ahead and have something, they could eat that. Or also, I spoke with Ms. Newsom, if she wants to consider a school pantry program, because I know she said that she has some students that stay hungry, it's already 5 in the evening, and that's something that we would not handle, but I know that was a discussion, so there's many discussion points I have had with her and, other administrators there. So if it's for Valdez, they do have a dining location. We have our wonderful staff that travel, from our child nutrition center, and they go ahead and distribute the
provide.
meals, provide the meals that they show up, yes.
So the main thing about Valdez High School, it is non-traditional, so you really never know how many kids are going to show up in the
Exactly.
morning, noon, or evening.
Correct.
Because it is non-traditional. So if you were to ask Ms. Newsom, well, how many kids do you have right now? She might say, well, we have 80. But that may not necessarily be the case, because it depends, are they there fully enrolled? Did they leave, or did they not come at all? And I know that Dr. Cruz has dealt with this, as well as Mr. Cerda. That was one of the reasons that Mr. Cerda, as secondary director, I know that you had a question about Mr. Cerda being there at one point or other, to give you any answers, because he's been with that program. I know that Ms. Newsom started that program, and I believe at the very beginning, when she started that program, she had one student, way back years ago in Old Lamar. And it is a very successful program, but again, I can also tell you that during the pandemic, we were delivering meals, and not we, our CMP individuals were delivering meals there at the corner of the
Yes.
boardroom, not just for our kiddos that were coming in, and moms and dads picking up meals, but also for Valdez. And I know that that's a constant discussion that we have had. It cannot necessarily be a non-traditional, you cannot have a traditional cafeteria
Right.
because of the requirements that have to do with the Texas Department of Agriculture, keeping the meals warm and taking them and bringing them. It's just a different situation. We do try to adjust with her as best as we can. I know that Mr. Cuella has been there. I know that Mr. Velasquez has been there, and that we've worked in all ways possible to make sure that they get provided what they need. And it is, some kids, the reason that they're having problem in a traditional school is because they can't go in the morning. So they may come at 10, or they may come at 1. And today I'm coming at 1, tomorrow that's why they have Odyssey. That program to complete their courses, because it's non-traditional school.
But something we are considering because I've researched this and I've called TDA, is possibly the issue of a vending machine where the meal is reimbursable, whereas the student comes, he'll go ahead and, as an ATM or what have you, and then you get it's not going to be your typical hot meal or such, but it's something better than nothing. So but we would rather have that personal touch where we're there. And again,
providing the menus that we
Yes.
share with the other schools.
so that's where we're at.
Okay, and Mr. Cuellar, going back to dinner, LISD is still doing dinner,
Yes.
and we're not increasing the number, no one has asked for extra dinners?
Well, when they do ask for extra, we typically, our staff typically does batch cooking, because mainly at the cafeterias where we have the supper on site program. So they're there to provide, for example, let's say there's 5 more students or community, because it's open also to the community,
Okay.
18 years and younger. So we're able to go ahead and have those meals ready. It's a little bit different from breakfast and lunch, but supper, we typically have it after school. There's tutorials, educational enrichment, and has to be before 7 p.m. I know, for example, right now we are expanding our supper program. I think I shared it with Dr. Rios and Mr. Velasquez. We have 7 recreation centers. We don't have the staff, but the recreation supervisors from the city of Laredo, they go to our center, they pick up the meals, they got trained and all to do the rosters. So that's how we are increasing our supper reimbursement. But it's not because it's only, we're expanding supper
All right,
in
thank
that
you.
proximity.
But the
So,
numbers,
Thank you.
bottom line, the numbers have to match.
yes.
For TDA, they have
Yes.
to match.
Correct.
May we proceed?
Yes, please. Good job, Robert.
Thank you.
Skip over to the athletics fund. The total revenues we have collected, $115,000, at 57% of what we anticipated in the budget process, while the expenditures are at $836 and $581,000 in obligations. So if you notice, the program is running at a deficit, however, general fund is able to support it.
Did we skip 2 pages here?
I skipped the E-rate, there's very little activity. So, I don't know unless you have any questions on this.
I just had a quick question going back to the food. So the revenue that comes in is primarily from the state?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
It's federal and some state funding. And if he sells meals, he'll collect some under local. Right? Here's our debt service fund. This is where we collect the interest and sinking from the taxes and what we generate in state aid. And so far, we've generated 29.5, 92% of what we thought we were going to collect, and expenditures of $28.1 million. So you show here that we have $1.4 million more, but this profit actually belongs to the following year. Since our fiscal year begins in July, we have to have enough money to make that first payment in August. And so some of it, you see it here, right here. That's why you see this large fund balance. Now, here we have the special revenue funds. I'm gonna 224. Here are your special ed funds. Ms. Ordeño? Right here. And these are the balances we have under those programs. Right there. So far, for the, under the IDEA formula grant, we have spent $1.7 million, and the budget is at $4.1 million. So I will be looking into this to address the sleeves. I'll get together with the program manager. Any other questions on this balance?
Thank you, ma'am.
But I just have to tell you, for IDEA, food is very limited. So all federal funds, food is very limited. So we have to look for alternative funding sources.
I missed the beginning of that statement. For IDEA?
Under IDEA, for most federal funds do not allow food.
Not IKEA, idea.
So idea is the individuals with.
Disabilities.
Oh, I see. Thank you. That's what that's
Right,
where I
for
was
special ed, I'm
perplexed.
so sorry.
It's all right.
We're going to
I'm learning.
start, we'll talk acronyms
Yes.
most of the time, but
So you're saying we can't, federal funds limit the use of their funding for food for
Right.
IDEA. So we have to find
Okay.
our own monies to pay for their food.
alternative funding sources.
Thank you.
Donations, whatnot.
I got it. Thanks.
Yes. Any questions on the special revenue? If not, I'll move on to the construction funds. The current expenditure rate is 68.6%. We are required to meet a percentage rate of 85%, and we missed that target. And it should have been met July 30th, 2021, in the amount of $87.4 million. And now we have the 2022 bond proceeds. Right now, the current expenditure rate is at 2.48. We're expected to spend 85% of that by June 22nd, 2025. Under gift and bequest, current donations, $27,152, and the fiscal year-to-date donations, $180,502.
And those gifts and bequests are going to the campuses. Maybe they'll get, I don't know, someone will give them something and we still have to report it. It doesn't come to us, it comes to them.
Moving on.
Yes, please.
Discussion, sorry.
Item number 3, discussion and presentation on the following budget amendments. The first one is 3A, BA number 2223-35, discussion and presentation to approve the general operating fund budget amount in the amount of $33,843 as a result of transfers between functional expenditure categories. And Ms. Ayala, do you want to talk about that one?
These are normal requests of campuses to move funding from one function to another. And by law, we have to come before the board under the general operating fund for you to approve it. We recommend approval.
So the next one, 3B-BA number 2223-36, discussion and presentation to approve the 2018 EDA Bond Series Fund 692 budget amendment in the amount of $80,000 to allocate interest earnings for the purchase of furniture and equipment for the J.W. Nixon ROTC construction project. And this is part of the project that has been ongoing, and it's the natural, or not natural, routine function as part of the bond to be able to supply that.
Right.
Ms.
And-
Ayala?
Yes, Dr. Rios, and we do use, thank you, we do use interest earnings again to purchase items that have 5 years or less, right? And so it takes a time for the construction of the project to come to fruition. Meanwhile, we are investing funds, right? And as we generate the interest earnings, the project is done, then we start furnishing the building.
And that's the same thing that's going to end up happening to Cigarroa High School, Cigarroa Middle,
All projects.
all of them. Dovalina that just got finished or almost finished. May I proceed?
Yes, please.
I have a question real quick.
Yes.
Is it accurate to say that Nixon will now have had, once this is completed, is it accurate to say that Nixon will have had 2 new ROTC buildings within the last 10 years?
I don't know when the other one
No.
got constructed. I know it's going to be demolished.
The
No,
old-
the old
The old
ROTC was built in the
cosmetology.
70s.
No, but the cosmetology building. The
Oh,
one that's there
it.
right now is the old cosmetology building, isn't it?
That's
No,
gonna be-
across from-
that's demolished.
Yeah, we demolished the whole ag building and all of that was together and put a new building. That was built in 68, 69. We moved it over here to the side. That's why they got the new area right there. And then the ROTC building was built in the 70s, right by the tennis courts, is now moving to where this one is at.
So the one where they're housed currently is old,
Yes.
because the allegation is that that was a new building.
Oh, no, it never went through any bond procedures to do it. That building was left there since before we were born, probably. But no, some,
Thank
No,
you.
no.
born, but
That's what I thought, I just wanted to clarify.
Hi, since before you were born. You're making me be very old.
well, some of us.
I was born in 54. Okay.
We were in horse and buggies back then. No, never mind.
Okay. May I move on?
Go ahead, please.
Item 3C-BA, number 2223-37, discussion and presentation to approve the Food Service Fund budget amendment in the amount of $507,847 to appropriate additional revenues and expenditures for the Supply Chain Assistance, SCA, second round grant funding. Ms. Ayala or Mr. Cuellar?
This is just to budget the amount of the grant and
Okay.
to record it in our books. For the
Okay.
board to accept it and for us to record.
Okay. Item 3D-BA 2223-38, discussion and presentation to approve the General Operating Fund 199 budget amendment in the amount of $70,000 to transfer from the K. Tarver Elementary School Canopy Project to fully fund 3 box trucks for high school band programs utilizing the Yeary funds. And I want to talk to you a little bit about that. I know that Mr. Velasquez cannot be here. He had an emergency. I know that Mr. Esteban Rangel is here, but let me just give you a brief summary. And Ms. Ayala, you can go into this. When these were approved, we had a certain price. Well, when we went, after you all approved it, then we went back, and this was the estimation. So then, from the estimation, we found out that it was going to be about $15,000 more. Actually, it was more than that. But then the size of the trucks was not the size that the band needed. So now, we are asking for this amendment so that we can order those 3 trucks in the right price and be able to to supplement what was already approved. If we don't approve this budget item, then those 3 trucks cannot be ordered. There will only be one or so, and they'll have to share. And the approval of the board at that time was to approve for the 3.
Correct.
So the board approved taking money away from Kate Harbor?
No.
No.
Well,
That
that's what it
is,
says here.
Right
Yes.
now, we are.
so what we're saying to you, we had a meeting, Mr. Velazquez, Ms. Ayala, and Dr. Cruz. We talked about, originally, we had appropriated a canopy for Kate Tarver. There was a meeting with the Kate Tarver principal. And what has happened is that canopy in that space is not going to be able to be built. So we were looking for $70,000 more to be able to fund the trucks. So at this point, we know that cannot be built, and the principal is saying this, well, not only the principal, Mr. Velazquez, individuals, I think Mr. Neda might have been involved in this also. What has happened is, this is not a project that can be completed in the space that it's at. So that frees up $70,000. Since we need money to fund the rest of the trucks, we're saying, we are asking for your approval to take the $70,000 that added to what has already been approved. So since the Kate Tarver project cannot be done anyway. So instead of taking that $70,000 and leaving it there and just letting it go to general fund, we're saying to reallocate it, and we're asking for your approval to put it into the purchase of the 3 trucks that we already had allocated funding for, but now they cost more.
And why did we purchase the 3 trucks initially when the funding was first approved?
Because at that time,
They
there
were
was
old
not.
estimates.
Monday?
They were old estimates.
They were older estimates, but not only then, not only were they older estimates, the size of the trucks that were being offered at that time were not the size that was needed. So the projection for them
So we
didn't
get it.
fit.
So we didn't get a quote for the accurate size then?
We did get a
Right.
quote, but it was an older quote, and then when we went back to actually, after you all approve, we have to go and do a purchase order. And that, a
Well-
purchase order is like a contract. So they're not going to, they're not, just because you all approved it here, that's not a stamp of approval from the dealer, because you all approved this much, now we're gonna give it to you at that much.
I have a quick question. What is the reason why, or let me ask this, where were those canopies were gonna be built at Kate Tarver?
Where?
Yes, where?
Mr. Rangel could probably, Mr. Velazquez could not be here. He has an emergency, family emergency, but
Understood.
Mr. Rangel can better explain it. I'll tell you the wrong way.
Good afternoon, Mr. Arnaiz, for the record. I believe she wanted them in the middle. You know, it's separated. It has an entrance on both sides. She wanted to have them in the middle, and that's where she kind of wanted them. And, but then once they started to look at the specs and everything, they didn't actually go with the project. So then that's why we're asking for this approval to move for the box trucks for each high school to have its own truck.
Okay, so,
Sorry. So if that was unable to be completed, what was the alternative to have those canopies there? My children used to attend Kate Tarver, so I know sometimes you had to move from one side of the building to the other, especially the gym, you know, and the cafeteria. So when it's raining, pouring, things like that, our children are gonna get wet. So what's gonna be the solution to that problem?
I would have to talk to the principal. I'm really not sure
That was
what
a
solution
structural problem.
they came up with.
There was a structural problem on putting those canopies up. I talked to Mr. Mr. Velazquez. I needed a more permanent fix than a temporary fix. This, I think, was, to me, in my mind, it was gonna be a temporary fix, and it wasn't gonna, it'll do the job for the next 5 years, but I am of the thinking that I want something more permanent in there. Because
So she understood that, and then that's why we're asking for the approval to move the money so we could be able to purchase these 3 box trucks so each high school could get its own.
Because we even talked about sharing, but that's hard to say. Pues you know what, Miss Cigarroa or Mr. So-and-so, not Miss, you know what I'm saying. We're gonna share, well, you know, every band wants to have their own thing, and they've been after this for quite a while. Now, the Tarver project is not off the list. What we need to say is, we have a new budget coming around, and we need to look and see how best to meet those needs. But right now, since we're needing that money, we're asking for your approval to be able to make sure that every single individual, not every single, the three
High
high
schools.
schools get their trucks.
And Dr. Rios, because they're big trucks, they can't go into the campus improvement plan like everything else?
Right now, they've been renting, and they're 26-foot trucks. I don't know if you've seen, whenever a band
Bobcat.
travels,
Yes.
it's a lot. And so that's been the point. We have to compete with other entities to be able to get a truck. And so, Ms. Ayala, you can probably further expound on
So
that.
the reason why they were funded was because we funded all those pending projects that followed the process of requesting additional funds for capital improvement. So when we got access to those disaster pennies, we funded most of those requests that came in for additional funds to fund projects.
So the trucks that are gonna be purchased
it
are
was-
26-foot
Yes.
trucks?
Yes.
Okay. So this is to assist or get the money to finish being able to collect, to be
All
able to
three.
purchase all
In
three
order to,
vehicles.
yes, to place the order.
So is this the only amount that is needed to be able to purchase those three trucks? Or are we gonna be needing additional funding?
Most probably. So I say most probably is because as people begin to place the orders, they might, the funding provided might not be enough, and they may not have enough in their local budget to move forward with the project. And so then we go back, we analyze, we get together as a team and
Well, it is a problem with the system, the way it works for all school districts and everybody else, is by the time we say yes, by the time the order gets placed, we're sometimes at the mercy of our suppliers, where they say, this is only a 30-day deal, and rightfully so. Sometimes their cost goes up or down, or it just continues to move. It's a moving target again, and then it happens. But if we don't do it now, it might increase it even more.
So I want to talk about the disaster pennies, because you might not remember, or you were not here when we had the disaster penny conversation. The disaster pennies were, and Ms. Ayala explained it at one time, we had an option as a board, the previous board voted to be able to take advantage of what at that time was called a disaster penny. There was already a list of projects in the capital improvement plan that we had not been able to finance, or not finance, to be able to fund. And so once this decision was made by the board to take on the disaster penny specifications, what ended up happening was we got together as a district and we said, well, what have the schools wanted or the programs wanted in all this time, and what can we afford? And those trucks had been on the list forever. And so that was one of the funded projects, well, underfunded or not funded projects that were included in the disaster pennies, and that's how this came about.
Let me just stop right here, and then, so, because we're gonna pretty much see daylight coming in tomorrow.
Yes.
So, but a lot of this stuff was in operations at the committee level?
Yes.
Y'all
It's
discussed it?
already been
Okay.
done.
So let's, whatever questions that we might have to get more detail on it, let's continue to do it, but for the sake of time, we'll just continue to roll with the agenda items as they go along.
So,
But let me ask before we go on.
But if it's very important like that, yes, please, go ahead.
Yes, it's super
Yes, ma'am.
important.
Okay.
Super. Because, so you're taking $70,000 from Ms. Masty, from Tarver. Did somebody say, okay, Ms. Masty, before we take the $70,000, do you need anything for your school besides the canopies? Or we're just like, okay.
No, it wasn't just taking it. In fact, they went to visit, they had this discussion with her, and they didn't say, do you want something else? This money had been appropriated already with that designation for the canopies.
Okay.
So what we're saying is, look, and this is a process that happens every time that we look at capital improvement, and there's some changes in the capital improvement plan, or any other plan that we have, we usually go and talk to the individuals or to the programs, and we tell them, look, this is what's happening. It's not going to be, it is a viable project. It may not be a viable, so there's that discussion. But there is no discussion to say, okay, well now, instead of this, let's go back, because it would have still have had to come back to the board to say, you don't want this, you can't have the canopy, well now let's take it back to the board to have something else. What we're saying right now is, we are recommending that this amount that cannot be used for the canopy at this time, that it be reappropriated to fund those trucks. So again, that campus, as well as any other campus, will have another opportunity to look at their what do you call it, CNA, their needs assessment, and they'll be able to say, well, now, you know what, we can do this other. And so we're going through a continuous process. So if something has already been dedicated, and we had already talked to you all about it, now we're saying we want to be able to move this so that it can at least finish this other project. And then she'll get a chance to say, these are other things that we need. Every school gets a chance to do that. So getting back to what Mr. Garza said, all of the items that you see, for the most part, in the Business Support Services meeting, they've already been discussed at committee meetings. If you are attending those committee meetings, then you can get more details from the individuals who are in those committee meetings. And we do want to thank you for attending those meetings, because then you get some more details. Right now at Business Services, unless Ms. Ayala says this is a brand-new item, it's already been discussed. So may I proceed,
Dr. Rios,
Mr. Garza?
just for, I guess, point of order, I know, like you mentioned, some of this has been discussed in previous committee meetings, and that could be possibly true, but I can say for myself, I haven't been, since I've been here, I've been here in almost every single committee meeting, and I haven't heard this item be brought up before the committee. So I understand, for the process, don't misunderstand me, but these are things that, we have questions that we need to discuss, and like this item, it reads discussion. So we have some questions that we want to discuss, and it's to make sure we get everything done, and I
Yes.
agree, it might cost more later on, but if we're gonna come back and need additional funding to purchase those trucks, well, let's go ahead and solve the problem right now, so we can get those trucks done, because ban is
Absolutely.
coming up in August, and we need those vehicles ready to go. So how
Just to
long
place the
it's
order.
gonna take to get those
Exact-
trucks?
More than a year.
So we're gonna have to go back, so
Right.
these are things that it takes time, I understand, but we gotta get it done as fast as we can. So I
And
understand.
Mr. Ramirez, you're right. Some of these items, for the most part, and I use the word for the most part, as Mr. Garza has said, most of the procurement items, they are in your committees. However, since it is business support, there may be other items, as I said, that will be added. So it's not that we're trying to obfuscate an item. And it is a committee meeting here, so that you can ask questions. If there is something that is new, we are going to tell you. We just had a meeting about Tarver 2 days ago, and about the trucks. So if we have an opportunity to put something on this meeting, you're going to hear it. If it's going to go to the regular board meeting, and there is going to be a budget amendment that is going to come to you at the regular board meeting for other things, because of the
Big-ticket
posting
items.
deadlines.
Well,
And on those
but-
posting deadlines, it takes 72 hours. So if we find something that cannot come in this meeting, it'll go to regular board meeting.
Well, what I'm saying right now, because we're not voting on any of this right now anyway. So the point of is just discussing it. So whatever questions matter, because there's going to be obviously more questions on stuff that's coming up right now. Any other questions, we can refer them over to superintendent between now and the day that we vote on all of this, which is going to be next week. And therefore, but yeah, please, Dr. Rios, let's, as much as you can, as detailed as we can, that's what the committee meetings are for. So whatever you can put in the committee meetings for so that we can have a full discussion individually on all of those things, just have them in there, and have as few as possible, if possible. Obviously, there's going to be some issues that we can bring over to business support, only because of obviously the time issue. And I want to make sure that every board member leaves here satisfied that they know everything and anything they want to from those things. But if we do it continuously do it this way, it's just going to create more of a hassle and trying to move the agenda items forward, and for the lack of time, you know,
And
for
we
the
have
sake
to
of
wait
time.
30 days, right?
Okay, but Rick, all right. So, say it comes back, well, it's gonna come back in the board meeting,
Yeah,
and there, we're just voting, but if we want to discuss something,
So,
do we make a motion, what is it?
no, my suggestion is what I've always done, when I have a question that's gonna, you know, do that, I'll make the phone call tomorrow or the next day, or write it in the form of an email. Hey, I wasn't
Okay.
too sure about this one. These are the questions that I have for this. They'll give me an answer, make sure that I'm satisfied. I want to be satisfied when I vote on it, that I've already, everything. But, and so I do it between now and the Thursday meeting, you know, and you're not doing anything out of the sake of transparency or anything like that. You're just asking the questions that you're asking right now, but away from today, so that you can get all the answers you want between now and then. Even if you want Mr. Velasquez to call you, but you go through Dr. Rios, ask her the questions, I wasn't satisfied with the explanation on the 70,000, can we dive further into it? And then, but that's out of today's meeting. That way, we can proceed with what we have, and then you can be sure that they're gonna give you all the correct answers that you want over here without further expanding the time limits of this meeting, let's say.
So let's go back to the agendas. You have a consent agenda, and then you have a regular agenda. When it's consent, it's going to roll over, correct, from here. That's a consent item. However, at times, there's been items that are not rolling over because they didn't show up here. So they'll show up in the regular agenda at the regular board meeting. So you're going to have two types of agendas. The consent, I'm sorry, the consent agenda is something that you've already reviewed, and you know, if you have any questions, as Mr. Garza is saying, we can ask either at committee or to me and, or to cabinet members, and we'll have that discussion. But for the most part, I will tell you, and Ms. Ayala will tell you, if there is something new, and there has been new things, not having to do with money, maybe it's something that's brand new that didn't make the deadline, because we have the 72-hour, it will show up, and we'll tell you, this is a new item. And even just where it is, if it's in the consent, you already saw it. If it's in the regular agenda, you haven't seen it. That's the way the agendas are formed, correct, Mr. Perez?
Well, and one of the things that is going to happen, you'll be receiving by your Friday packet tomorrow, or by email, the agenda items that are going to come out in the regular board meeting. So that any questions, it'll also give you that time to read them, and then if there's any questions that you might have on each individual one, that you might want to call back, you know, right now. And then what it does, by the time the regular board meeting comes around, you're already satisfied that, you know, you got all the information you wanted. Or if there's a question about it that you want to raise to Dr. Rios, that, hey, I'm not really happy with this, or I'm not going to vote on this, or like that, then we'll discuss that. It's rarely that it happens, but we'll discuss it at the regular board meeting. And if it does merit tabling, or you know what, you can vote, you know, I'm totally against it, then that's what the voting is for at that time. But, you know, a lot of times you don't catch anything like right now. There might be something when you get home, yeah, I forgot to ask this, or the other. There's still going to be that 1 week time period so that you can gather your thoughts and ask those questions directly.
In your board manual, the operations guideline, the board operation guidelines, it also says there that you as a board, or the board previous to this, voted on that manual. And if you do have exactly what Mr. Garza is saying, in the manual, it specifies that if you have any questions between one meeting and another, it specifies, you know, to make sure that you give us also enough time to give you an answer, to find you know, the information. Because it's very hard to come up sometimes with information off the top of our heads if it's not already on here. And so, of course, we want to be able to give you all that full information. May I proceed, Mr. Garza?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, this is item number 4, discussion and presentation to approve the recommendation or selection for the following bids, proposals, and qualifications. Purchases shall be made from appropriations in the adopted or amended budget. Number 4A, buy board number 661-22 and tips number 200105, silent panic alarm system, software and training, estimated expenditures for $57,000. And Mr. Mejia?
Good evening, Board of Trustees, Dr. Rios, colleagues, Hector Mejia for the record. Item 4A is from the Big Five Board co-op contract and the TIPS co-op contract. By Board 661-22 and the TIPS 200-105 for silent panic alarms systems, software and training. The Evaluation Committee recommends Raptor Technologies LLC for an estimated amount of $57,000.
Proceed.
Item 4B, RFP 22-030, Tax Collection Services Software Maintenance. The Evaluation Committee recommends Hamer Enterprises for an estimated amount of $156,000, and this is for 5 years. Item 4C is selection of a procurement method. The staff recommends approval of the request for a competitive sealed proposal as a method of procurement for the Raymond and Terza Martin High School cafeteria remodeling / expansion and site canopies. Item 4D, for building and grounds maintenance, repair and operation supplies, accessories, and equipment. The Evaluation Committee recommends the following 10 vendors as published in this agenda. Would you like me to read those 10 vendors?
That's okay. We can read it.
Okay, sir.
No, we can read.
Item 4E from the Sourcewell Contract 030421-JHN for fire extinguishers, inspections, parts, services, and replacements. The Evaluation Committee recommends Johnson Controls for an estimated amount of $75,000. Item 4F from RFQ 2020-002. This is professional civil engineering and surveying services for the parking lot resurface at Fixed Assets. The Evaluation Committee recommends KCI Technologies, formerly known as Civil Engineering Consultants, which will represent the best value to the district. The vendors being recommended from a pool of vendors who were previously awarded for this RFQ. Item 4G from By Board Contract 641-21, the Martin High School Beatty Gym floor replacement and annual maintenance and refinishing of the gym wood floors district-wide. The Evaluation Committee recommends Quality Hardwood Flooring, DBA QHF Sports, which represents the best value to the district.
It's a replacement.
I do have a question regarding that, Mr. Mejia. On the third column, if you could, I don't understand, it says in effect for a period of 1 year, starting this month on the 17th and concluding on the 16th of 2022.
Yes, sir, it's a typo. We'll get that fixed.
Okay, thanks. I
Yes,
was
sir.
concerned.
Item 4H for RFP 22-029, vehicle maintenance, repairs, tires, and related services. The Evaluation Committee recommends the following 11 vendors as published in this agenda. Would you like me to read those 11 vendors? Thank you. Item 4I is RFP 22-015 for police and security officer uniforms, tactical gear, specialized equipment, and related items. The Evaluation Committee recommends the following 5 vendors: Dana Safety Supply, GT Distributors, Kirkpatrick Gun and Ammo, Nardis Public Safety, and Sinatra Uniforms for an estimated amount of $100,000.
Mr. Mejia, I have a quick question on this item. Would that include, what exactly would it include? I know there was mention about possibly getting some shank preventive or protective vests for our security guards. And would this item include under uniforms like a jacket, raincoats? Because I've seen some of our security guards that are out there performing their daily duties without the proper gear that they might have. So would this encompass that type of uniform and gear for our officers and our police officers and our security officers as well?
Yes, sir. That's what this is for, specifically the uniforms, the shirts and the pants. As far as equipment, it definitely goes into the belts, badges, stuff like that, vests, so.
Flashlights,
Yes, sir.
gloves.
Well, let me be clear. The discussion we had at the meeting, this part is not included in this. The shank.
Yes.
All that kind of stuff. Because this was discussed 2 months, 3 months ago. They just brought it, they had to get proposals, quotes and everything for that.
It's 44,000, I believe.
Yeah, and then from there, what we did at last week's meeting, they proposed it again, and that
And Mr. Mejia, I have a question. Do you know how many uniforms they get?
That I do. I
No?
couldn't tell you, ma'am,
Okay.
a yearly, yearly supply.
Uh-huh.
I couldn't tell you.
2, 3? Only 3?
3 per officer. Okay, okay.
And how can we go about increasing that, ma'am, maybe to 5?
Well, we can look at that and see if it fits into the budget. I
Mhm.
mean, we'll see. I know that, I don't know if the 3 has been a standing number forever. We would have to speak to to Chief Hale, and she's not here right now. There's an illness in the family. But we'll talk about that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
May I proceed?
Yes, please.
Item 4J for software and licenses for multiple cooperative contracts. The Evaluation Committee recommends the following 23 vendors. That's published in this agenda. Would you like me to read the 23 vendors?
Go
Thank
right
you.
ahead.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Yeah. Like how, ma'am? How? Oh, may I proceed? I'm sorry.
Yes, please.
Okay, item number 5, discussion and presentation on the investment report for the second quarter ended December 31st, 2022. And it will not be Dr. Cruz, it will be Ms. Ayala. That is another, by the time this rolls over to the next items, it will be the right person, it will be Ms. Ayala.
Go ahead.
So I'm next, okay. So the average quarterly yield for the quarter was 3.96. Last year, December 31st, 2021, the average quarterly yield was at 0.22. So we are right now earning more interest earnings, and you're going to see that when I go over the mid-year review to make that adjustment to our budget. So compared to the 3-month and 6-month treasury yields, we are a little bit below that, but we are outperforming the average quarter end for Logic.
Excuse me, Ms. Ayala. Mr. Chairman, may I be excused?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Good one.
So
Good.
in,
Too well.
may I proceed? So in this graph, you can see that we have 18.74% in the bank, and most of our money is with the pools, and that's because we are earning higher interest rates in the pools. Any questions?
No, go ahead. 3.96 is pretty good.
Oh, may I proceed to read the next item?
Yes, please.
Item number 6, discussion and presentation on the mid-year review of the 2022-2023 annual budget. This is something that happens on a yearly basis, and Ms. Ayala, can you please review it for us?
Yes, this is a required analysis under policy CA local. At the end, or near the mid-year of the year, we have to provide before you an analysis of where we at. So this is our general fund. This is where we deposit our M&O taxes. So this is our, let me get it together, hold on. This is our original budget. And through time, when funds are needed or request to be transferred, then obviously it gets amended, and we follow those amendments as well. So what we're proposing are these changes. Why? Because interest revenues they've increased. So we're recommending to increase our local revenue by 1.2, our state revenue by 6.7, our federal revenues by 750,000, and our expenditures by 732 and 1.24 million. The whole analysis is written here. I don't know if you want me to read it or you can read it. But we are going to be proposing the budget amendments to reconcile to this amount on Monday, for next Thursday. And the
Actually, the
projects are
meeting is
listed
not
below.
next Thursday.
Oh,
John,
next
I
Wednesday.
wanted to remind
Oh,
everybody.
we're posting tomorrow. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we
I-
have to
I do
draft.
have one question.
Mhm.
It's 50,000 for the PAC due to the loss
Yes.
of rental revenue. What rental
Correct.
revenue?
So before, we used to rent the old Civic Center.
Right.
And so those revenues will go back to sustain all the costs, all the custodial services and whatnot. So because that's no longer the case, we have to actually increase their budget because of that loss in revenues.
And also because now, as we're using the auditorium more for our schools, we, especially in the evenings, in the afternoons or whatever, in the weekends, we're putting some of that, we're needing some more of the funding for that.
So that'll be addressed now that we're starting, initiating the budget process for our next fiscal year.
We're gonna have to, otherwise, they're gonna be short anyway during the year. Just like if you see transportation fleet, they're short 229,000 for operations and another 173 for fuel.
Right. Well, that one, the fuel I can understand because it's all market value and it fluctuates. I was just concerned about the PAC. Thank you.
Okay. Then these funds that we are displaying here require board approval every year. Even though we have like 32 funds, these require on an annual basis board approval. Here we have the debt service fund where we deposit the INS taxes. So you see, we are not proposing, we're on target, so we're not proposing any adjustments. And the analysis is here in the bottom. For the E-rate fund, again, we're on target. We're not proposing any adjustments. Under the athletics, they are requesting 240,000 in additional funds because they're short. The student travel meals were increased, so that's part of the request. And the helmets, they need reconditioning, so they're requesting additional funds.
So, going back to the travel meals, trustees, before you came on board, there was a request by our athletics and to increase the amount of per meal.
The per diem.
Yes, per diem per child or per student. And so that was approved at that time. So the original budget that we had allocated, now we had to fix it and so on. And what was the other point, the other one?
The helmet.
Oh, the helmets.
Reconditioning.
Yes, they are very expensive. I don't remember if you, Maggie, if you have the price for each helmet?
No, they're going up, they're even higher now.
So what was the last price that we had? It was like 600 and some. I think it's going up per helmet because of concussions and so on.
I thought it was like $900 per helmet, something
Well,
like
at
that.
one point.
I can't recall. But they need $30,000, they're short.
Just
The
a point
reconditioning.
of information also, that the board that was here previously approved that every student shouldn't be charged to go to any game. And so sometimes when we make those decisions right there, sometimes the end result is that. It has to come
impacts the
from,
revenue.
it has to come from one pocket or the other. So when we make those type of decisions, while it might sound great, and obviously it was probably good because of COVID and all that kind of stuff, people were not going to have monies, recession was coming in, whatever that deal is, we might have to start considering the fact that we might have to go back on a limited basis to start charging, because
A little
that
bit.
$240,000 is coming straight from our general fund to offset some of the cost of letting all the kids go in free to every game and every athletic event and everything that we do.
And lastly, we have the food service fund. No adjustments necessary, on target. Any questions?
So may I proceed, Mr. Garza?
Yes, please.
Item number 7, discussion and presentation on the following localized policies: DEC local compensations and benefits, leaves and absences; FNAA local student expression, distribution of non-school literature; FNAB local student expression, use of school facilities for non-school purposes; GKD local community relations, non-school use of school facilities; GKDA local non-school use of school facilities, distribution of non-school literature. I will tell you that even though it says localized, every policy that comes to you has already been recommended by the Texas Association of School Boards. They have to fall in line with the legal policies. And I know that Ms. Castillon has given you those policies so that you can review. We also send out the policies to our cabinet depending on If it's something having to do with students, it'll go to student services. If it has something to do with curriculum and so on, it'll go to the appropriate cabinet member. If there are any changes, then those changes will come back to you. So, Ms. Castillon?
Thank you, Dr. Rios. Good evening, board members and Dr. Rios. We're bringing before you 5 local policies for your consideration. Tonight is for your information really only, and these will be on the agenda for next Thursday's board meeting, regular board meeting. Next Wednesday's, thank you, sir, for next Wednesday's regular board meeting. The 5 are DEC local, which is compensations and benefits, leaves and absences. Then there's FNAA local, which is student expression, distribution of non-school literature. FNAB local, which is student expression, use of school facilities for non-school purposes. Yes, thank you. GKD local, community relations, non-school use of school facilities. And the last one, GKDA local, non-school use of school facilities, distribution of non-school literature. And if you would like, I can go through each policy and give you a brief overview of what they are. You do have copies of the PowerPoint, and you do have copies of what the recommended text is for each of these.
I think it was better we read it all, digest it, and any questions can come later on.
I agree with Trustee Garza.
And I just want to reassure you that the changes in these they have to align with legal. If they're not, TASB looks at those, so when they send you some policy that's local, it's already been through the legal review at the TASB level. So may I proceed, Mr. Garza?
Yes, please.
Okay, item number 8, discussion and presentation on TASB Policy Update 120. This is the newest one. CKC Local, Safety Program Risk Management Emergency Plans. FFI Local, Student Welfare, Freedom from Bullying, and FNG Local, Student Rights and Responsibilities, Student and Parent Complaints and Grievances, and then FO Local, Student Discipline. Again, they are aligned to the legal policies. If you have a chance, please read those. They will be presented to you for approval when you get to the regular board meeting on Wednesday.
If you have trouble sleeping, this will get it fixed. Right there.
Yes. May I proceed, Mr. Garza?
Yes, please.
Item number 9, discussion and presentation on the memorandum of understanding between Laredo ISD and Laredo Webb County Bar Association regarding the Cason Fellowship. We talked a little bit about this at the curriculum and instruction meeting. It's an opportunity for our kiddos, and we want to do more than just this. Today, we had a very good visit at various sites with our CTE program having to do with internships. And this is another one that talks about that. So if there are any questions for Mr. Garcia?
We did discuss this. It's the Cason Fellowship in collaboration with the Laredo Webb County Bar Association. So it's an opportunity for 4 students at this time, might go up to 8. These students will get a $1,600 stipend. It's an 8-hour a day for a 6-week summer course. And they'll be following, shadowing, being mentored by federal judges and municipal court judges.
That application process is happening when?
We're in the process. They're giving us some final criteria, and then what we're going to do is, as a campus, we're going to go through a first batch of interviews and so on and so forth, reduce it to at least 3 candidates by campus, and then those will be handed over to the Laredo Webb County Bar Association, and they will be choosing the candidate that will be participating.
Excellent.
And they have to be from economically poor backgrounds, correct?
They're looking for at-risk, not necessarily low
Thank you for the
socioeconomic,
clarification.
but they're looking at at-risk students. Those kind of students that are really good students, but we could lose them, at any minute. Those are the ones that we're looking at.
So,
Great.
Mr.
Okay.
Garza, may I give some announcements?
Yes, please. Thank you, Roger.
Thank you. The LISD surplus auction will be held this coming Saturday at 11 a.m. in the Fixed Assets Warehouse located on 2201 Santa Isabel. The LISD Board of Trustees regular meeting is scheduled for next Wednesday, at 5:30 p.m. LISD students are participating in the IBC Youth Parade under the stars on Thursday, February the 16th, and I believe you were given some tickets. thinking it's that, right? Right.
So
So
no parking back here?
it'll be in front of, by the pool. You know, the aquatic
Okay,
center right
yeah.
there? Directing you how to get in. Okay, next announcement, LISD students will have the day off on Friday, February the 17th, but there will be staff development on that day. LISD schools and administrative offices will be closed on President's Day on Monday, February the 20th.
Good, did you mention that, so that they can, so y'all can hear, so will there be snacks provided for that?
Yes.
For the grandstand area?
Yes, in the grandstand area, I believe IBC, is it? And WBCA is, when you go to the youth parade, for the youth parade also, they'll be providing snacks, and you're invited to come to that. You do have a parking pass and your tickets, I believe.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
It's a really great outing. I'd suggest if you haven't seen it and done it, it's good.
May I say
All right.
one more thing?
Huh?
May I say?
Yes, yes.
Just want to thank Mrs. Castillon. We had two wonderful articles in the newspaper today, and I was very happy to see the one about, they were both about Lamar, but the one about one-act play, most importantly. So thank you very much.
Okay, anything else? Anybody? All righty. Everybody have a great rest of the evening, and this meeting now stands adjourned.